Hi everyone, welcome to the basics of level design and level art. So why level design and level art together? So level design and level art is one of the two groups that are constantly throughout the entire project of creating a level, constantly working together. Wow, that already went, okay, there we go. My name is Mihailo Novaković, I'm a level designer and this is my colleague.
I'm Marija, I'm a level artist.
And so as well, we're going to go a bit about ourselves. So I actually started in Ubisoft as a development tester in 2018. And like Diana said, talking to a lot of people actually really helps. And if you're interested in something else, Ubisoft will always try to invest in that if you're showing interest. So my interest was level design at the moment, and it was something that I strived for. And after about a year and a half, I achieved it, and I've been a level designer now for 2 years.
Cool. I studied architecture, so I didn't have that much relation to gaming. But then after 2 years of doing ArchViz, I got into gaming. So there is a way for you to get into gaming, even if you're not studying for it, even if you haven't had any connection to it before. I did play games, but I didn't really know how to get into the industry. So I've been working in the gaming industry for the last 6 years. I worked on casual games and then AAA games as well, and I've been with Ubisoft for the last 2 years as a level artist.
Yeah, for me, I actually went to architecture school for like 2 years, so I decided that's not for me. So I went to Računarski fakultet, computer sciences, and I was like, okay, I can do this, but it's not something, again, that I would want to do. And somewhere in the middle, I applied for Ubisoft. I got there as development tester without even knowing that I had capabilities of shifting horizontally to other positions. And like I said already, many months later, I achieved that as well. The project we worked on were, I think we worked Rainbow Six Extraction. We did Ghost Recon Wildlands, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and Riders Republic.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So Ubisoft, there's a lot of us all over the planet. Like, we're the only continents we're not are like Africa and Antarctica. And this is Belgrade in the city center in downtown. So most of our presentation will be done mostly from the perspective of Rainbow Six Extraction and what we did there on that project, so you can see how the development of a level completely goes from scratch to what we made. These are some of the subjects we'll be going through. I'm not going to go through them, but we're going to go through them together through the presentation. But this is basically just a complete step-by-step guide of how actually a level goes. So level design, what is a level in a video game? It's a really broad term, and the level can be anything. It can be from an open world game to a closed off game like Counter-Strike with maps. It can be a chessboard if it's a board game. Basically anywhere that the gameplay is happening inside a game, that's called a level. So that's where we come in to do a level design. For our side, we level designers like to say that we do technical stuff. We like to make it functional and work, while the artists are there to make it pretty, look happy or sad, whatever we need.
Scary.
Scary, yeah. So the difference is, like I said, so we do more technical stuff. We do layouts, we do blockouts. So basically we're trying to get the sense of what the level is going to be. We go from the early stages of what the concepts are. We study layouts, try to see what's happening. And artists are, again, working from the concept art. They do some modeling, and there are artists specifically for texturing, lighting, etc. So this is like a bare bone process of how the level is being created. So first we have an idea. So we have like a kickoff meeting, like we're going to be making this kind of a game. We have some concepts. So the concepts are grabbing what kind of game it's going to be. Is it going to be a shooter? Is it going to be a strategy game? Is it going to be adventure, puzzle, etc.? From that, we can get a general idea and we can do some drafts. Pencil drawings, Google SketchUp, whatever actually feels much more comfortable to you. And there's going to be a lot of papers all over the place. There's going to be a lot of iterations all over the place. So we draw something, we do a sketch. We go through multiple reviews. If we don't like it or certain parts of it, we can it, and then we go back to the drawing board until we have that specific rough sketch of what we really want to do. Once we're happy, we can move to the 2D plan or the layout, which is basically a more concise plan of the sketch. Now we have some metrics. We know what is the height of the wall, width of the hallway, etc. We're going to be talking about metrics as well. And we go again through the same process of multiple reviews of trying to get exactly what we want to do there. Once we go there, we go to the blockout phase, which is putting everything in 3D. So this is called blockout, gray boxing, white boxing. It really depends whoever calls it however they want. And this is where we put like everything in three-dimensional space. And this is where we can already see some changes as well, because something that works on a 2D layout, on a plan, it doesn't always translate well in the 3D layout. So again, we have a lot of iterations, processes, reviews, and until we're ready for what we can ship to the artists to actually start making it look prettier, we do that loop until we're ready, and then the art can take over. So these are concepts and references. So basically, concepts and references can be taken from anywhere. Google is your friend as always. Having a great library of games that you played before can also help, because again, you know what works and what doesn't work for the type of game you're trying to make. A lot of sketches, references from other video games, movies also help. So everything that you can actually use to create a level is always appreciated. And here we can see some concepts of a layout from what a beginner would do and what an expert would do. So beginner, you can see it's all over the place. It doesn't have a really concise path where the player should be going. It's more done like more to look pretty rather than to be a functional, because something that's functional in a real world doesn't have to be functional in a video game. It can be boring, player can get lost, etc. Intermediate already gets some shapes. He's trying to connect them, not the best way, using a lot of L-shaped hallways. Now the advanced is getting more concise, more fluid. It has more how should I say, fluid approach to it. It's starting to integrate levels. So we have first level, second level if we want to have verticality. And the expert just combines everything and doesn't only use as like square shapes. It just makes it more natural to look like a level. And so layout. This is actually done from my test for Ubisoft when I was applying for the level designer position. So the subject was a prison. Basically, I did a layout, and for the layouts, you always want to name every room. So when artist has accepted your blockout and layout, they know what you're gonna make. So if I don't have any labels of what the rooms are, what I'm making, they don't have to think this is a prison. This can be for them a hospital or whatever. So that's why we also include different reference pictures of how I actually imagined those rooms, hallways, and other rooms, I guess, to look. And they can, from that, take inspiration on what they want to do. My inspiration was Shawshank Redemption movie, and I wanted to have a prison with a big house in front. It was like a villa where all the offices are, and behind the house it's like a giant prison with infirmary, cells, and a courtyard. Funny thing is, a lot of people, so since for me the prison was really symmetrical and I didn't want to just have the left and right side completely the same, I thought I was really smart in saying like one side is under construction, which is in level design the most common thing you can do with something when you don't know what to put there. Just say it's under construction, and it's the easiest way to figure it out. And once we're happy with the layout and what we have, we can move to a blockout. So this is like a blockout of one map, and it uses rough shapes and line of sight breakers that's gonna help you guide player through your level. So you always want to guide player to your level. You don't ever want to have him feel lost at any point. But to do that, we don't just use cubes. We actually have something called LD sets. Those sets can vary from game to game, but for Rainbow Six, we had a wall, we had doors, windows, stairs, frames, platforms, and covers. Those are like the most basic elements we needed to make a level. Of course, we needed variations of those. So instead of just having one type of window, we had multiple type of windows. And I would also like to point out that none of this process was able to start until actually game designers, who are now missing, actually have the game documents. So unless I know what the game is, I can't make a level. If the game doesn't have a jump and later has a jump, that's a completely other level. If a game is first person, then third person, it's a completely other level again. And once we have all our blocks and we start playing around, wrong button, we can make a little house like this. And once we're happy with it, with its functionality and what we want it to do, if it's accomplishing everything, we can hand it off to artists to make it pretty, like I said, to give it textures and bring life to it. Now I talked about metrics, and metrics is really fidgety when it comes to video games because it doesn't always translate well from real life to a video game. So like this here, there's just a no grid. We don't know what this wall is, but we can guess it's like a normal sized wall. But if you actually put the grid on, it's like a 4-meter wall, which is ridiculous for like if we're in a closed room or something like that, of a regular house. As you can see, this is the wall that is at 2.7 meters, which is like a normal height of a ceiling, sorry, not wall. And it's really claustrophobic, it's dark, player feels narrowed, doesn't know where to move. But as soon as we just lift a couple of meters the ceiling, everything opens up. It's more comfortable for player to walk around. We have more space to work with to show off later art as well, so it's not everything just cramped up. This is an example of how metrics are tricky in a video game. So everybody played Skyrim, a game that came out like 5 times. And it has a mountain in the middle of the map, which is a giant landmark. You can see it from basically anywhere on the map. It's ginormous, filled with dungeons, with everything. That mountain with Skyrim metrics is about 700 meters tall, which is like the equivalent of a Disneyland mountain you can find in America. And also, when player is sprinting, he's running like 15 kilometers an hour or something like that constantly without getting tired. So the idea with metrics is to just make it feel big and make it feel impactful, but without actually translating real world. So like I said, ceilings of 2.7, that's not going to be comfortable for players.
We cheat a lot.
Yeah, we cheat a lot. So for instance, and it's always good to have metrics, at the early days of the project, you might not always get a metric system. When we started on an unannounced VR project to work, all we had was make it comfortable. That could be anything. So I started with a hallway that was 4 meters of height, then I moved it width, then I moved it to 6 meters, then it's way too big, then I narrowed it down to 5 meters, and from there we knew like for VR, 5 meters is really okay and comfortable for players. So covers. Covers also come into metrics because they are helping us hide the player or actually hiding certain parts of level that we don't want the player to see as of yet. In this case, we had an operator in Rainbow Six, which average height was, I think, 1.9 meters. So like a full cover was anything 2 meters and above. We use this to balance encounters in the game because if player had more cover to hide, the encounter was easier. So by reducing the number of covers or giving less cover, like the crouching cover, it was much more harder for the players to actually mitigate the damage they would be taking from the enemies. And for the types of covers, there are like 3 basic ones, and all of these you can use normally just to create a basic level. So we have the one that you can see through, but you can pass through. Those are usually you can find in the video games like bushes, waterfalls, and stuff like that. And they usually use them to hide secret passages, coins, whatever the game is offering you as a collectible. See through and pass through both are negative, so basically it's just a wall. And we can have a see-through but pass-through. It can be a fence, it can be an unbreakable window. And this we use usually for maybe foreshadowing something to the player. Maybe we want to tell the player this is where you will be going. Or maybe there's an item there and now the entire section becomes, okay, now this is a puzzle for you to reach actually on the other side of the level. And we have line of sights because we want to control what players see. So we will always be manipulating, and that's the word I use a lot when making a level, because we want to manipulate how player feels, what player sees, and how they can approach their target. So this is just a hallway. They go from point A to point B. Unless I have some hidden traps or anything that are not visible to the eye, there's not really much happening here. But by just adding simple covers, these are like the basic walls, player doesn't know what's behind each wall. It can be an enemy, it can be a trap, it can be an item. So we keep him in suspense. He doesn't see where the end goal is. He doesn't know when he will finish. So all of these come into combination of just creating this level can be another 50 minutes for all he knows, but the end is right there. Another simple trick is breaking line of sight with just simply moving. We have two adjacent rooms. We can just slide the door to the right. Now the player doesn't see where the end goal is, what's in the other room. Again, we're trying to build anticipation for this specific game because there were a lot of aliens all over the place. We wanted to make, there were like eggs on the ceiling alien that can attack you and everything. So we always wanted to just be there and make a place that it's never safe. The player doesn't never feel safe. But again, we want him to not be lost and know where he's going. That's why we have the golden path. Golden path, or the main story path, or a main path in general, is a main path that the player goes from point A to point B to complete the level. In this case, and in Rainbow Six Extraction, we used light and warm colors to signify to the player that the end, where the end is, or the safe place is. So you can see here two paths, left and right. One is up the stairs with white light, and the other one is on the right side with warm light, orange light, which is indicating a safe house where the player can feel safe. So a lot of colors are proven that the player are responding better to warmer colors than the colder colors, so they can feel safe. So oftentimes you're going to find yourself going the right path without any signs or landmarks or anything, just because of those subtle things that are making you feel safer or that you should go there. Like this example, so this is light everywhere is the same, it's really bland. Other than these two, let's say props, you're not really sure where to go. But if I add a hanging ceiling light, which creates a shadow that's basically pointing out to the stairs, I actually framed where the player should be going. Of course, player doesn't have to go there. If you ever played a video game where there are two paths, and you chose, and you're the one of the people who like to collect things, and you chose the main path and the other path just closes off to you. That's frustrating, but again, you chose that thanks to the hints that the game designers and level designers are actually placing all around the level for the player not to be lost. That's why today in a video game it's really hard to get lost. There are landmarks, there are light signs, signs in general that are so well placed in the environment that you can barely even notice them if you're not sure what you're looking for. And we can also use, you will also see a lot of ropes, boards on the ground that is always used to guide players. So if you don't know where to go, you can see like maybe a rope that is leading to somewhere, and those are also usually left not just as a prop, as a decorative piece, but also as a functionality to guide the player without actually being pretty intrusive on the level itself. And we can also use like horizontal barricades to stop the player's movement, not literally, but if he sees a blockade, he's gonna be in his head, okay, I can't go here, or I shouldn't go here, this is the right path. And this is some examples of Rainbow Six safe spots. So if you're first time playing Rainbow Six Extraction anywhere in the level, if you started noticing hints of yellow colors, and if you start following them, you will eventually start your path down to the safe house, and that is on every level, and player would never feel lost when they're first starting the game. And lastly, illegal spaces. This is something that usually this picture gives level designers a headache. There are no clear paths here. There are a lot of false calls. You actually have no idea where the player can move. This is, of course, just an over-exemplified option, but as you can see, there is no concise path, so basically you just avoid this. So there always has to be a clear path, there always has to be signs of where the player should go, but again, there shouldn't be an arrow saying you should go here, you should go here. So these are the examples of what an illegal space can be. So for instance, in Extraction, we had this reception here, and there were these blinds halfway here. And they were having issues with the player actually vaulting through that space. And the art director really loved these blinds because it gave the feel to the whole reception thing. So the best we can do is just block it off completely. But by doing this, we actually made another great decision, is there's another door behind here that the player now can't see anymore. So if the player sees this room and he says, oh, there's a door that leads here, so there's a door that leads here, so I can just abandon this complete section, I can move somewhere else because I know what the level is inside there. So again, that's one of those things that we try to block. We also had issues where the players would hide behind below tables, and if the tables are not destructible, the AI cannot reach them, and basically that's called a bug, and it just broke the loop of the gameplay we want. So then we were tasked with basically just filling out all the gaps below the tables if they're not destructible, or just making new tables altogether. The stairs, if we have space below the stairs, that's always tricky in video games because of the angles and the collision of how it works. And a lot of times players would just, again, hide all the way at the bottom of the stairs. The AI cannot reach them. Player can try to stand up, he can clip with the stairs, he can fall through the ground, he can be launched up, everything, all of those bugs were happening. And again, we just decided to tie it off with the help of the artist, depending on what the room is, on how to block off the illegal space. And this is an example, I think this is from Serious Sam. This is an unintentional issue of an illegal space where a couple of props placed poorly, and with the game being hectic as it is, player can just get stuck like that, and unless he loads or kills himself to reload from a checkpoint, he is completely stuck, and we always try to avoid those. And that would be for the basics of the level design. Once we have all those implemented, we ship it off to art to make it.
Give me the torch.
Ready. The torch.
Let me just see. Okay. So the level art, the job of a level artist is when we get the gray or white block out level from our friends, level designers, we make it pretty. But not just pretty, we also make it more immersive, and we make it more atmospheric, and we basically give the game the feeling that it's supposed to have. This is usually done by using assets, using props, buildings, textures, lighting. Lighting is one of the biggest players in the making of the atmosphere of the game. And there also goes some VFXs in.
Yeah, but they have special artists.
Yeah.
So there's a VFX artist, there's a light artist, texture artist, there's a lot of artists.
Level art is going to be, level art is actually, we'll go through the slides. This is the process of going through from the LD blockout stage to the finished look of the level that you ship with the game. So this is a process that goes back and forward multiple times between game designers, level designers, artists, art directors. So it's going into loops until everyone is happy and we get to ship it looking beautifully for our players.
What I'd like to mention as well is, as you can see from the start, the main volumes and the sizes of the buildings are still there. Line of starts are there. They may have shifted left or right a bit, but it completely stays the same. Except, and that's gonna, once we reach that point in level design, that's basically how it's gonna stay throughout the entire level. And there might be additions like these that can actually hinder player later, but in talking with the level artists and level designers together, we can decide if those can actually help or hinder the player more.
Yeah. So we begin with the concept art that we get. We don't make the concept art. The concept art is supposed to give us the idea how the game should look like, how it should feel, what the atmosphere is going to be like, what kind of levels are expected to appear, what kind of assets are going to be happening in the game. In Rainbow Six, there is a lot of dark spaces, a lot of alien structures, slimes going through the level, like sliding on the roof, and they're basically everywhere. And you have these tiny spots of light that will guide your attention towards where the level designer wants to go. So when we get a concept art, we kind of have to get the basic gist of it, but we don't have to follow it exactly to the every last little point. So here we have the police station that the infestation began. and you can see the design, and you can also see in the small pictures how the level art turned out in the end. So the artists kind of followed the basic guidelines to make the station be recognizable, but we also have like the liberty of placing all the other props and assets like the tents and cars, pickup trucks, crates and stuff all around the building. So we also had to always communicate with our level designers as to not block their paths and the way the player they wanted the player to go. But we kind of have this liberty to make some decisions on our own. This is also the interior of the place, and you can see how it does not look the same as the concept art, but you have the atmosphere the same as they wanted it to be, and it's not really that visible here, but you see the artists kind of had the artistic freedom to like take this police car and put it in the ceiling instead of the floor, and you know the structures, the alien structures are going through the space as is meant to be, but not exactly as in the picture. And then what our work after the concept, we start modeling. I hope you know the basics of modeling, but 3D models consist of these basic components. These are the faces, edges, and vertices. The difference between modeling for video games and modeling for animation or architecture visualization is that we have to keep it really, really optimized. So the number of polygons is something that we need to think about constantly. So it depends if the model is going to be a building somewhere in the level, or a character, or a prop that you hold in your hand. The polygons are going to be really different. And then we texture them. After we make the models, we texture them. There are texture artists in Ubisoft who make the textures and materials for us. So we just have to apply them beautifully. And to do that, we use the PBR materials. PBR materials are the industry standard right now. They consist of textures such as albedo, roughness, height, metallic, normal, and ambient occlusion. Albedo texture is supposed to give your model basic color. The roughness texture map is telling the material if it's going to be shiny, reflective, or rough. The height map gives it indents and bumps. The metallic map is telling you which parts of the material is made of metal and which one is not. And the normal map is giving you the illusion of depth. And the ambient occlusion light map is kind of simulating lighting on your objects.
Oh, it's going to reflect.
It's not going to reflect. It's the ambient occlusion. It's kind of giving you little shadows, like in your indents and bumps. So the other materials, not the other actual materials that we use could be separated in these three categories. So there are tiling materials, which we call seamless materials. And these kind of materials are the same on each side and can be tiled next to each other. So we can put them on rooftops, on walls, on roads, or on big surfaces that they can be repeated infinitely if we want. And then we have the trim materials that can be also tiled, but only in one direction. So we use it basically for longitudinal models such as police tapes or most usually trees, because the fibers of the trees go in one way. And we have unique materials that are not supposed to be used on multiple places and tiled. So they are probably used on one specific object that we also call a unique model. So to get our textures look pretty and right on our models, we have to unwrap the model. This is called the UV unwrapping. This is the process of turning your 3D model into 2D surfaces, which you can move around and place the texture, project the texture, so it looks right on the model, which we will see in the next slide. When you unwrap the model, you get the UV shells. Those things with little checkboards are called UV shells. You can have one, you can separate them into many. So why we need UV shells is to be able to manipulate the texture. So as you can see here on this picture, on the right side we have the good UV and the good UV unwrap, and on the left side we have the bad UV unwrap. The basic idea is to think about it logically. For example, if you have a piece of wooden texture, you would place the texture in a way that the fibers would follow the direction of the board. You wouldn't place it like diagonally. If you have seams on your texture, you would try to hide them in the back side of the model or in the on the edges. And you would have to make sure that your texture is not blurry in one place and sharp in other place by paying attention to the scale of your UV islands. Another part of texturing is the vertex paint, which is a fun way for us to get a little dynamic with our materials. This could be done in 3D software as well as some of the engines, and it's a tool to blend two or more materials together, so you will get a more dynamic look. And for example, you could get damages on the wall. This is the way that when we like build nature, that's the way we paint on like dirt roads and forests that are made of grass and stuff like that. These are the textures that were used in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think.
You don't place each grass separately?
No,
oh.
no. not every brick as well. And yeah, there's also decals. Decals are kind of like stickers. They are simple planes with alpha texture that has transparency that we just plop, plop on walls, especially when you have a tiling texture. When you tile it too much on a big surface, you can kind of see the repetition at some point, and that's where we use decals to kind of break it off. So the eye would follow the texture and then, okay, something there, it's not repeating anymore. So these are used for that, and also to make, environments more interesting and pretty. And also when you shoot, you have decal bullets appearing on the walls. Then we have the level of quality. This basically means when we get a shape or a model from our LD friends, it's not done in one day. It has to go through iterations. So you have, okay, this is going to be a crate. Then we make a basic shape of a crate, plaster a wooden texture on it. We don't unwrap it. And then when it gets approved, then we kind of start getting into the detail. We do the UV unwrap, and it also goes through another phase until we have the model that's ready for the final game.
This is actually the process of the entire level. Even though this is just a single box, the entire level actually follows this same process. So first it's just going to be gray boxing. Then we're going to get some basic props, basic textures, so we can place those around, even if it's not functional, if it's just decorative, because later directors and everybody who is reviewing it can actually start getting a feel of how your level is going to be and what it's going to look like. So this is basically the same path both for props and for the levels themselves.
It's basically placeholders until you get to the final stage. From the softwares that we're using for 3D and level art, we're using 3D Max, 3D Maya, Mudbox, ZBrush, Blender. For texturing, Substance Painter, Substance Designer, and Photoshop. And for engines, we have in-house engines like Anvil and Snowdrop, and we also use Unity. I don't know if we're using Unreal. Unreal is an engine that you should know about. Okay, so we kind of just got into this the beginning of my part. So the assets. Level artists make assets. Assets could be involve everything that you basically see and interact in the level. It could be buildings, it could be hero assets, modular props, Vista assets, and we'll go through them one by one. So the buildings, we make the buildings. The buildings, they can be, the buildings can be, they're always the biggest assets. You can make the buildings that the player cannot get into, so they can have a little less detail than the other ones. They can sometimes be somewhere in the distance, so we don't have to concentrate that much on them.
It can be hollow in the interior completely.
Yeah, for example, the silos are probably just empty on the inside. And you can also have buildings that have the whole level inside, so they're pretty much, the whole level is the building. So they have to be done until the very end. And on some other assets, you know, if the player can't get to them and can't see them, they just don't have to be finished on that side. They don't have to have polygons, and it could be just empty.
A good rule of thumb is actually that the level of detail is always going to depend on how close the player can get to that prop object or whatever.
Which is also what we know by talking to our colleagues. The hero assets are most usually the biggest ones, the most beautiful ones, and they are supposed to help you orient in the level. So they should be visible from a lot of places a lot of points at the level. For example, the Statue of Liberty here, or they can be smaller, like the motel sign. But the point is that they are unique, so if you run into them, you know where you are. There won't be another asset like this anywhere.
It's one per map. In this case, it was one per map.
So how we make the environments. Most of the time we use the modular asset sets, which are they most usually have a set of walls, pillars, walls with doors, walls with
similar to the LD kit.
Yeah, basically like LD kit but with colors. And they have to follow a specific metric so that you can arrange them together, and they would snap together and fit together perfectly. So with them we make big buildings like this. Other than modular sets, we have the specific assets that we call props. These could range from small to big to middle-sized, and they can be used for aesthetics purposes, to set dress the level, but they can also be used by level designers to kind of use it as covers or for something that they should find convenient to use them.
Since we like to say that at the start of the project, level designers have a lot of work, while level artists are mostly doing researches in what they're going to be doing. And once we finish with our stuff, level designers have a bit less work, and level artists are going all at it to make it more pretty. While they're doing that, we can focus as level designers also on mission design, the placement of the objectives, the placement of the power-ups, health packs, etc.
Yeah, and these are really fun to do because the player gets really close to them, to most of them, so they have to be really detailed, and you get this kind of cool feeling of making like a alien structure that glows inside and stuff like that. And last but not least, we have the Vista assets. The Vista assets are models that go like behind the level and somewhere where the player can never get. And they are supposed to make you feel like you are in a world somewhere and not like in a floating level on a turtle's back. So they are most likely going to be just simple boxes with really low res textures, or they can sometimes be just billboards of city skyline or fake forest or stuff like that. And they usually just have fogs between them and in front of them, so you don't really pay that much attention to that. And then we come to lighting. The lighting is really fun part of doing the level because it gives it the atmosphere, in my opinion.
Brings it to life.
It brings it to life. So the lighting can make one scene, the same scene, look in 100 different ways. So it can make you feel scared, it can make you feel excited, peaceful,
sad, lonely.
We can read all of this, epic, but you get the point. And we also have the world building, which is a big process that involves not just level artists, but also level designers and game designers. It's usually referred to more for the open world projects because it involves more land making, like terraforming, which is making the actual ground on which the game is happening. There are procedural programs that use the procedurals to make the terrains. I think we're using Houdini for this. You can make them by hand and with height maps, but I don't recommend it. So the terrain and then the vegetation and the biomes. The artists make the trees and the rocks, the flowers, and then we also use Houdini to place them around the world. So the process is not as scary as someone believes it is, because we don't model each tree on their own and don't place it every grass by one. So a program does that. But still, the AI hasn't won yet, so we have to go in after the procedural and kind of remove the extras. For example, if the program puts the trees on the road, we have to go and like delete those.
Basically, the program just grabs, like we say, we want to have 10 types of trees in this forest. We just put 10 types of the trees in the Houdini. We select an area, it's just going to randomize out of those 10 all over the place of the zone we want. And since it doesn't know what the road is, what a house is, whatever it is, it's just going to go all through that, and that's where we go in and just manually cleaning everything up.
There are parameters that you can set, and procedurals are your friend until they kill us all. And talking about procedurals, we can also make procedural settlements. In this case, these are not really procedural settlements. These are from Assassin's Creed games, and these are all historical locations, so we have to do it by hand. So don't get scared. No, this has been done by more than one artist. So it's not just one person doing all of this. But for example, if you played Assassin's Creed, if there is a military encampment, those are probably done procedurally. And then we come to the micro stories, which is, in my opinion, maybe the most fun part of being a level artist. Because it gives you the freedom to put your own, to be a writer and a creator, and put your own story in this bigger story that the game is. So you can kind of make little design sets where you can have a story, for example, here where a homeless person was living here and then had to run away, or was eaten by aliens, you don't know. The player doesn't know, but it's something that someone will be like, someone was thinking about this, let me explore what it is. Or maybe here, for example, if you come into this room as a player and see all this money on the floor, you will be like, okay, maybe there's something for me under the...
Something shady happening.
Or a health pack, you don't know. But you get the idea what the story of this room was supposed to be, and this is one artist having fun. Same as here, gardening. Gardening before the pandemic. I mean, if you don't feel this, I don't know. So to conclude the story, the role of the level artist is to make a world where the player would be engaged and immersed, to give the level more than one layer to explore, and to kind of help the level designers give hints to the player where to go and just make you enjoy your game. So that's it.